Hey everybody, welcome to the FBI podcast. We're here with Anjie from Compeer. We're going to be doing a little bit of discussion on what does post-frame financing look during your process. So Anjie, I'll let you introduce yourself, how long you've been with Compeer, what you guys do, and what that looks like, just kind of a broad overview.
Sure. Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share some things with your listeners and your viewers. So my name is Anjie Erbsen. I'm the Senior Leasing Specialist for Compeer Financial. I base out of Illinois, and for FBI, I work with your clients from Michigan and Ohio all the way through to Iowa. I do work for Compeer Financial. I base out of northwestern Illinois, so I cover quite a large area there. I've been with Compeer for 11 years, and I spent another 19 years before that doing the same role that we'll talk some about on the sales side in tax deductible leasing.
Awesome. Yeah, so Compeer, for those who don't know or haven't built a building before or haven't gone with a financial agency or company to help them, what does Compeer do? How do they assist that process? And just who is Compeer?
Sure. So Compeer is actually part of the nationwide federal farm credit system. So we are tasked primarily to work in the farm community out in rural America. And so we work with part-time farmers, hobby farmers, we work with full-time farmers, we work with all types of agribusinesses, fertilizer and chemical dealerships, feed dealerships, grain handling, all kinds of things, anything that touches the ag world, even down to smaller, sustainable, organic type farming operations, just a very wide variety of things that we work with. So we actually have a specific area that we work with in traditional farm credit financing, things such as operating lines of credit, real estate. We do that primarily in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And then my group, the lease group, is a specialized group with a specialized product, and we really can cover a much larger area, and that's where it's a good fit for us for FBI.
Yeah. So do you get asked a lot of questions, say like on the suburban side or post-frame homes, people wondering, hey, can you help me out here? And
Sure.
what's your response normally to those types of projects?
Yeah, so we kind of split our clients out and we talk about and think about something that we call eligibility. Are they eligible to borrow from Compeer in the farm credit system? So we break that out into a couple of different groups. One of those would be our part-time farmers, more suburban type homes. They have to have a very limited amount of farm income and be looking at something in a farm-related building. So maybe they're storing some equipment in their building. Maybe they're building a livestock facility. Maybe they have kids who have cattle or sheep or swine that they're showing in 4-H or FFA. Maybe they have a horse operation. Maybe they run a trucking operation and they transport agricultural products. So those are more of our part-time farmers, more suburban type things. We also have our full-time farmers where we're looking at machine shed and shop type buildings, a lot of grain handling facilities. I know that isn't exactly what you guys sell, but that comes into a lot of what we do in the construction side as well. Also livestock facilities, anything from dairy, swine, poultry, the equine buildings, a lot of things there. And then we also look at our agribusinesses, so a farm-related service type building, and those are where we would pick up seed dealerships, we would pick up fertilizer and chemical dealerships, feed manufacturers, food and ag products. So there's a really wide breadth of clients that we serve.
Yeah, for sure. So if you are using the building and it touches ag and a use group standpoint, typically it's something you guys are open to
Yes,
working with.
generally we can find a way
Yeah.
to make that fit within the parameters of clients that we work
sure.
with.
So with that said, if someone were to come to you guys or FBI were to work with the customer and bring you into the process, how do you enter into that process and what does step 1, 2, and 3 look like with a customer?
Sure. So we really try to work it as a partnership. I work directly with the sales staff for FBI buildings. I many times work with the office here. Sometimes I'm talking to your project managers. But in that very early stages, we're working as a partnership with the salesman. So the salesman is working with the client to design the building, bring all those things into exactly what they're looking looking for. I enjoy when we get to the end of projects seeing that building that you guys have built. There have been some really interesting buildings, and it's fun to kind of see that client have this dream, and then it comes into a building that they love on their property every day. So a lot of times the salesman will kind of work with the client, make sure that the client is a good fit for us, and then they'll make a referral to us. Sometimes I call the client directly, sometimes the client calls me directly. So they'll make that referral. We'll kind of work as a team to say, okay, here's the building that we want to build. Here's our dream building. How can we put financing around that to make that a good fit for us, to make that a doable project? So many times it's not just the cost of the building, because obviously we can include the building, but we also work with the client to include all those other things. You know, their concrete, their electrical, heating, plumbing, insulation, overhead doors, all those things that make that a complete building. So we put that package all together for them so that they can see how everything fits together. And then we put that into a couple of different products to make that affordable for them. Some clients are looking for a tax deductible product. Some clients are looking for a different type of non-tax deductible product. So we try to listen to the client, what their needs are, what's the best fit, and then we help them structure that around so that they can get the building they want.
Yeah, for sure. So what does that look like from the number standpoint of like, okay, so how are you beneficial versus going to my own bank or going somewhere I've worked with in the past?
I think one of the main things that fits very well is that Compeer and FBI, we understand our processes very well. So the FBI sales folks and the great staff here in Remington understand that when that's a Compeer building, how that flows through. The client doesn't have to come up with any money during the term of that. Now, sometimes they may make a small down payment to get everything going while we're getting some paperwork done. We reimburse that back to them, and they really don't have any cash out during that construction phase. The other thing that I think that really is such a nice fit for us is that because we primarily work in the farm and the ag community, we understand that very well. That is what we do every day.
Yeah.
We understand that market, as opposed to sometimes you get a project into a small local bank, and many small local banks have a great fit for a lot of clients. It's an important part of our banking system in the U.S. But sometimes a project just may not be something that a local bank is comfortable with. A larger project might be outside of their lending limits, whereas we have that capability to come in and not only do that project, but other projects that the client might have. We were talking earlier about a client that I think I'm now on their third project with them. One of those was a grain handling system, and the other two are very nice FBI building setups. So it allows us to continue to come back in, help that client. We understand their business. Doesn't scare us when they say they're putting up a large cattle facility or an equine facility. Doesn't scare us when they're putting up a large shop building. We understand the financials that go around that.
Yeah, that's a great point in the sense of like you are experts when it comes to that ag community, knowing knowing their needs, knowing how that looks, what their projects are, all that type of stuff. So what are some financial options that you guys provide specifically to the ag community?
Sure. So generally on the building side, we look at two different type products. Probably the product that we use most often is a tax deductible lease product. That product has several names in the marketplace. You'll hear it called a tax deductible lease, an operating lease, a pro option lease. All of those are kind of the same wording for a product that's set up for the client to be able to deduct the payments on that as a rental. So most of the time as we're looking at buildings, if we have a client that's filing a farm schedule, they would normally depreciate that building out over 20 years. It's a long period of time. If we have a client that is more in the commercial side, they're still in the ag side, but they technically file as a commercial business. Those may be, for example, your large animal veterinarians, many of your seed dealerships, chemical and fertilizer dealers. Those types of things, they're still very agricultural, but they technically file a commercial schedule on their tax returns. Those buildings are normally depreciable out over 39 and a half years. So if the client pays cash or goes through a conventional loan product, it's a very long term. What the tax deductible lease allows them to do differently is to actually write off 100% of that payment that they make as a rental in the same year that they make it. So if you have a farm client that rents ground that they farm, for example, they write that rental off. This goes right in the same place on their tax returns. And they can take that off in as short as 5 years out to about as long as 10 or 12 years. So it allows them some specific tax deductions that are available. So during the term of the lease, Compeer actually owns the building. We rent it or lease that to the client, and we give the client some options at the end that allow us to transfer that ownership to them as an option at the end. So that's one type of product, and it is probably the most popular product. Another type of product that we have is called, it again has several names in the marketplace. It's called a non-tax lease, a capital lease. It's also commonly referred to as a dollar buyout lease. Those are very, very different type products. The client will still continue to take that longer term depreciation. Sometimes there can be some tax reasons that they may want to do that and still be treated as the owner. But interestingly, we also do that on buildings that maybe need a very large remodeling project. I have one under construction right now that was an FBI referral. They, down the road, I believe, will build a much larger building. But for right now, they're spending some dollars to remodel an existing building on this farm. It's an extensive remodel, but because we're not building a new building, the tax deductible lease isn't a really good fit for them. So we do both type products, and again, it comes back to listening to the client, listening to what their needs are, and trying to fit the right product to it, just the same as your salesmen on the FBI side are trying to fit the right product, the right building to the client's needs as they listen. So I think that's part of also why it's a really great partnership, because we're both listening to the client. It's not a cookie cutter feel. You don't call in and you get the same spill. We really want to understand how your project works, what you're trying to do in your project, and then we want to fit the best possible product to that.
Yeah. As you said earlier, right, you guys view yourselves as partners that come in, try to understand the customer's needs and how you can best serve
Absolutely.
what they need, right? And yeah, especially when you're looking at, $500,000, $1 million, $200,000 projects. These are big investments, right?
Right.
People need someone who's willing to step in and help them out.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize that not every investment has to be $1 million for it to be large. We have clients, especially on the part-time, more suburban hobby farmer sector, that that building may be $50,000, but that's a big purchase for that particular client. And so we want that to be a great experience, just the same as the client who might build a $100,000 or $1 million building.
For sure. So one of the last questions as we come down to time here, you've done an awesome job explaining all the complex topics. I appreciate that. So if someone's watching this and they're like, oh man, that's nice, that seems helpful, but I don't really think now is a great time to buy, right? Markets are kind of unsteady, prices have been increasing, and then I see all these interest rates increasing. What would be your comment? What would be your advice or your outlook when it comes to that question?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly, on the market side, because I travel in a very large area, and people are like, well, what are you seeing? Are you guys, did buildings really, drop off? Are you busy doing things? And we really are still very busy on the building side. And I think in part, as we look at it, as we look at the overall market right now, particularly as it pertains to interest rates, I think we've all seen and heard every time we probably turn on the TV, listen to the radio, that interest rates are moving. We hear a lot of talk about the Federal Reserve raising the Fed funds rate. That's a very popular term you're probably seeing on TV. And what they're trying to do is manage the inflation that we have out there and manage the supply chain sector as well. And so as we look at that, we've taken a couple of rate increases since around March here of 2022. It is estimated that we took one in June. We'll probably see one in July. And it's estimated that we're going to see another 4 to 5 rate increases, by the end of the year or certainly into the first quarter of next year. So we are seeing that, and we were in such a low rate market for so long that people are like, oh, maybe this isn't a good time.
Yep.
But actually, when you take a look at it, and there's lots of charts and bar graphs and all kinds of things out there that you can pull and look at it. But technically, when you look at it, we're still in a very historically low marketplace. Are we as low as we were last year or in the beginning of COVID? No, we're not. But historically, we're still very much at the bottom of that curve. So it makes it a great time to invest in that building project as we go down the road, as supplies, move around in terms of pricing. It's still a really good time to invest in that project for your farm operation, for your farm business, or your ag-related business, to really kind of take advantage of putting that building into place and allowing it to work in your operation. If you're thinking about that building because you need a building to store your equipment, you're looking to expand your livestock operation, whatever the case might be, you're still looking to do that. And there's still a value to that building in terms of a return to your overall business. So you're still going to be locking in historically low rates. So typically those rates are going to lock in at the end of construction. So during construction, the client doesn't really have any cash out, so it makes it a really nice cash management tool. So as we're moving through that construction phase, the client doesn't have a lot of cash out. They do accrue some interest as we set up their construction piece, and they really don't have anything out of pocket cash until that building is completed and they put it into use in their operation. And that's where that building then will start to make money for them and start to see a return. So it's a great time if you need that investment in your business. It's still a great time to do that. We're also, from the commodity side, we're returning back to some record high commodity prices. Now, on the flip side, we're also seeing some record high input prices as well. So there's going to be some offset there. But still, overall, the agricultural outlook is very positive. So it's still a good time to invest in your business, manage that cash flow because you don't have a lot of cash out. It allows you to kind of maintain that cash in your operation. To have that available. I actually have a lot of clients that are normally cash paying clients. So they could pay cash for that building, but they're looking for tax deductibility. They're looking to manage that cash, to have it on hand if the farm down the road comes for sale, anything like that.
Yeah. And so you mentioned too, you don't lock in the rate until the project is fully complete, as in everything's done. Concrete's poured, doors are in, all of that, correct?
Correct. It can lock in very close to construction. It's real difficult in this changing market because we've seen, it moves very quickly, it changes very quickly. And part of the challenge to locking it in is we don't know how long that construction project's going to take. So we don't know, from the time that FBI comes in, you do your building portion, it may take another 3 to 6 months after that for all the other contractors to get done.
Which is a big deal right now because
Absolutely.
rates might be 4 or 5% right now, but you're done in December and it might be 6, 7,
something
right?
totally different. So we're working with clients to really manage that, to say, okay, how much longer do we have? Where do we think that we're going to do? So we are starting to lock in some rates and some funding for the clients close to the end of construction as we get maybe 30 or 45 days out, and we know we've just got a small number of bills come in yet, so we can start to kind of work with the client to lock that in and manage it. And also a unique thing as we get down the road, should we return to a time when we are in a lower interest rate market, Compeer also has the availability to do a conversion to a lower rate down the road. So if you have a client that has a 10-year lease on a building and we get 3 or 4 years or 5 years down the road, we see a different change in the marketplace to a lower rate, we can actually do a conversion. That's not a new credit application. It's not additional costs, those kinds of things that you would have in a new credit application. We just do a little bit of paperwork and we convert that payment down and relock it to a lower rate.
For those fearing like, I don't want to, what if things drop in 5 years? I don't want to get stuck, right? That's
Exactly. Yep. So it removes that part of the unknown of what happens if we get down the road. We'll work with those clients. We did a lot of that during COVID as we got right into the very beginning of COVID and the Fed funds rate dropped substantially. That moved the whole market down. And we went back to thousands of clients and said, hey, we can get you a better rate. Would you like to do that?
That's awesome.
So
awesome. Well, anything else, Angie, that pertains to the conversation you want to add?
I think the thing that I'd like to add when we talk about partnerships earlier, I mean, one of the things that we like about partnering with FBI, and so clients all the time say to me, do you work with anybody else? Who else should I be talking to? And I always like to tell the clients, I do a lot of FBI buildings. So I see a lot of them. I hear a lot about in the construction process. And it's really just such a smooth process. Your folks are very, very professional when they're out with the client. I know you guys spend a lot of time internally working on that process to make sure it's the best process available for the client. And that really gives us a sense of knowing who we're working with in that project. Sometimes we'll have clients that will say, what about Joe down the road? Well, I don't really know Joe down the road. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it, but we have a group that we're comfortable with what that process is, not only what the sales process looks like, what the construction process looks like, and what that finished product looks like. And I tell clients all the time, the best thing to do is go look at those buildings. Maybe don't go look at the one that was just built last month, but go look at the ones that are 5 years old, 10 years old, and talk to those guys that build FBI buildings and say, what do you like about your building? How'd that go? Because I do feel like you guys really, really shine in that area, and there's nothing, better than that finished product for them to go look at it and go, wow, that's an amazing building.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that goes both ways, right? If you want to be a high quality builder, you don't want to be working with a company who's going to be shorting people or trying to rip people off from a financial standpoint, because it's very personal, and that's a full scope process. You want everything to go smooth. So it's been a neat partnership, and you guys, my time working with you has been completely smooth, and my customers have always been well handled. So it's been a neat thing to see.
Super, thanks. Well, as any group, and I know it's the same on yours, we have a great team of people behind me. I think people see me a lot. People tell me they see me everywhere. But at the end of the day, there's a great team of people behind me too. So, and I know that's the same on your end as well.
Yeah, there are big teams to make these big dreams come to reality.
Absolutely.
Right? So, well, thanks so much, Andy. Appreciate your time.
All right.
Thanks for
Kurt.
all the knowledge you shared, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Yep. Great. Thanks.